Coming up, how a flu vaccination event at one Valley hospital could provide a roadmap for mass COVID vaccinations.
Plus, bar battle, why bar owners want to revoke the relaxed rules allowing restaurants to sell takeout liquor.
And COVID vaccine concerns, why the general public still has some reservations over the rush to find a cure. We break it down later this half hour.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Maithili Guppi.
And I'm Kelsey Calasi. Thank you for joining us.
As flu season begins, doctors warn of a twindemic, people catching the flu and COVID-19 at the same time. They say it will also be an extra challenging winter for healthcare professionals as symptoms for both COVID-19 and the flu include fever, headaches, muscle aches, coughing, and sore throat. One hope is that this flu season may not be as severe as previous years because of social distancing measures put in place for the coronavirus.
Phoenix Children's Hospital mandates that all their employees get their flu shot. So every year, they hold an event to get as many of them vaccinated. This year's event, however, looked a little different, but it could teach health officials a safe way to administer a COVID vaccine.
Perfect. I'm going to give you this. Hold it nice and tight like a football.
Employees at Phoenix Children's Hospital are lining up, waiting to get their flu shot.
Yes.
It's nothing new, but it's more important than ever.
We're not quite sure how the flu and COVID are going to interact in the same patient. And so if we can protect ourselves from the flu with COVID in our community, that would be best.
The hospital has done this mass vaccination the past 4 years. This year, however, they hope to reach a new goal.
Our hope is that with this day, we can immunize over 5,000 employees. That would be record-setting for us.
This year, the event looks different too.
We did put a lot of thought into social distancing.
To help with social distancing, the team here drew chalk drawings all along the sidewalk, each of them 6 feet apart, to tell people where to stand while they waited for their flu shot.
Inside, we're cleaning and sanitizing those stations after every person.
Everybody is masked. Everybody is using really good hand hygiene.
The parameters put in place not only keep people safe, but it also prepares the hospital for when a COVID vaccine is ready.
If we were to have a COVID vaccine that would be safe and effective for our employees, this will show us how we can quickly and efficiently and safely provide vaccinations to our employees.
And because the hospital has experience running these mass vaccination events, Manager of Occupational Health Donna Goebel feels confident that when the time comes, they'll be ready to administer the vaccine.
Everyone sort of knows their roles and can mobilize very quickly to be able to get this up and running.
How are you?
Good, how are you? But until that time does come, Dr. Kellner wants to make sure everyone is protected from the flu as the country fights the pandemic.
The flu can cause serious complications in people, and it is not a simple virus for some. And so we have a vaccine that can help, prevent those symptoms and can make those symptoms more mild. We should absolutely be going to get it.
Dr. Kelleher also mentioned that she believes the flu vaccine this year is going to be a very good match to the influenza virus. In the broadcast center, Dylan McKim, Cronkite News.
The average number of daily coronavirus cases in Arizona dropped by 75% after mask wearing became widely enforced. That's according to a new study by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The study showed a drastic drop in cases between July 13th and August 7th, not long after preventative measures were put into practice. It also found that cases began to see a decrease after state officials gave local government the authority to implement mask policies, reportedly affecting 85% of Arizona's total population. And finally, the report also found that coronavirus cases increased 151% from June 1st to June 15th after the statewide stay-at-home order ended.
A new court ruling could force Arizona restaurants to stop selling takeout alcohol. Local bars are fighting against Governor Ducey's decision to allow restaurants to sell cocktails to go due to the pandemic, a right typically only allotted to bars. When COVID-19 shut down Arizona bars earlier this year, businesses like 5030 Cocktail Lounge were left at a disadvantage and lost months of revenue. One of the only things keeping bars afloat during that time was selling takeout alcohol. However, Governor Ducey allowed restaurants that same privilege. a decision that went against Arizona liquor laws. David DeLoss is the president of the Arizona Licensed Beverage Association and the owner of 6 bars, including 5030 Cocktail Lounge. He's one of the 130 Arizona bar owners suing the governor over his decision to close certain businesses depending on the type of liquor license owned and allotting privileges to restaurants that they typically do not have under Arizona state law.
What we're technically doing here is taking a privilege that a licensee has paid for, $100,000, and we're taking that privilege and we're giving it to someone else that has not paid for that privilege. You're giving somebody something by taking it away from another. Unconstitutional and certainly not fair.
Maricopa Superior Court Judge Pamela Gates has issued Governor Ducey a warning of a potential final order to be made in the near future, saying he's been violating the law and to allow authorities to enforce the law once again. One regular customer of 5030 Cocktail Lounge felt the shutdown of bars while allowing restaurants to continue to utilize the takeout privilege was unfair. Mo, who didn't give a last name, is concerned since some local bars have suffered to the point where they can't reopen.
Restaurants and bars operate on such a small margin anyway, and to shut them down, these businesses, there's a lot of businesses that aren't gonna reopen. They can't afford it. These people have put their life savings into a business that they can't recover from.
The key factor in the lawsuit lies in the classification of the liquor license and the type owned. Series 12 licensees do not have the legal ability to sell takeout alcohol, but Series 6, 7, and 9 licensees do. 5030 Cocktail Lounge is classified as a bar with a Series 6 liquor license. This means that they'll have the advantage over restaurants who will be forced to stop selling takeout alcohol if this ruling is implemented. DeLoss and the Arizona Licensed Beverage Association hope that Ducey's decision will be overruled by the judge and will return the to-go alcohol privilege to businesses with the correct liquor license.
Well, I think the key takeaway here is not only has the Attorney General ruled this to be a far-reaching step that the governor has no authority to make, but the courts have also ruled that this is an unconstitutional move by the governor. We hope to see this in court. In the case that we are involved in, that the judge will rule in our favor and Governor Ducey will reverse his decision to allow 12s to continue to sell to go.
According to the governor, the decision was originally made to provide a key lifeline to Arizona businesses during the pandemic, despite going against Arizona state law. In the broadcast center, Mackenzie Allen Charmley, Cronkite News.
Tucson police are trying to put an end to police brutality and violence against law enforcement by training all officers on cultural competence. Instead of having officers educate other officers about racial injustice, the Tucson Police Department asked a group of African American educators to lead the training. Both TPD and the group of educators believe the initiative will help bridge the historical gap between police and the community of color. For now, they'll focus on training local cops, but the 8 educators say they do plan to start working with other agencies across the county soon.
College students of color represent a disparities population based on greater levels of unmet mental health needs relative to white students, according to a study. Cronkite News reporter Rosara Wardsworth gives a glimpse into what mental health access looks like for college students of color in Arizona.
The series of protests against the killings of unarmed Black people this summer spread across the country. University leaders, such as National Association of Black Journalists President Kiara Spotsville, explain how they are coping.
I feel like a lot of student leaders this past summer within the Cronkite School, and specifically student leaders of color, have felt honestly drained and taking on a lot more than, a normal student signs up for when they go to university.
Student Anaya Braveboy is leading the charge on protests in Arizona. She shares how she helps members of the Black African Coalition at ASU manage stress.
The BAC had to make sure we were reaching out to our students during the summer, and we were hosting support circles, reaching out to counseling to identify those counselors of color that could come in our spaces and, really play an active role within our community.
According to a study published in 2013 by the National Institute of Health, approximately 1,100 college students commit suicide every year, and almost 24,000 attempt it. In another study conducted by the National Library of Medicine, they found that treatment use is lower in students of color relative to white students. Aaron Trujillo from ASU Counseling wants students to know services
are just one click away.
We have worked to ensure that we are as accessible as possible for students, given this kind of historic moment in all of our lives.
On average, one person died by suicide every 6 hours in Arizona in 2018, according to a report by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. This ranks the state number 14 nationally, with 1,438 deaths by suicide. Dr. Amina Simmons specializes in racial identity, stress, and trauma within BIPOC communities. As a Black clinician, she says she recognizes the value in holding space.
Sometimes I think of them as my babies. That I can't help it but to give them permission to just feel, right, and have these moments and ask these questions and not know and not have solutions, but to again invite us in to be there with them, to know that they're not alone.
ASU counseling services are available 24 hours, 7 days a week. ASU representatives say they want to make sure students have same-day access to clinicians if needed. Rosara Wordsworth, Cronkite News.
ASU counseling services have support circles and groups available for students who would like counseling in a group setting.
Coming up next on Cronkite News, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi proposed a new bill that could impact the future of the presidency. The bill would allow Congress to intervene and remove Trump from office, why she believes this needs to be done.
And the parents of a Prescott woman kidnapped and killed by ISIS make a special appearance at the vice presidential debate. How they're continuing to ensure Kayla Mueller's legacy lives on. Next.
On Cobra. Some of the blackouts are more serious than others. 4 regions have suffered major damage to their infrastructure.
The situation's getting worse here minute by minute.
Good evening, everyone. We can get through this if we remain strong and stay together.
He must be hoping it'll all just go away.
We will get through this. You need to be very careful.
This doesn't look good. We can't control this. This place is a bomb waiting to go off.
All new, Sunday night at 9 on Arizona PBS.
Years after Prescott resident Kayla Mueller was kidnapped and killed by terrorists in Syria, her parents continue to push her story to the public. Marcia and Carl Mueller were in the spotlight as President Donald Trump's State of the Union guests in January, and as speakers at the Republican National Convention this summer, and again this week with a flurry of news about Kayla. I followed the latest news this week.
It's been overwhelming.
That's how Prescott resident Carl Mueller describes the past few days for him and his wife Marcia, who have seen a flurry of news about their slain daughter Kayla. This comes after 7 years of not knowing what exactly happened to Kayla, who was killed by terrorists in Syria.
We don't really know what happened to Kayla. You know, we don't know how she was killed, who killed her. You know, the only proof we have of her death is from ISIS.
In 2013, Kayla was doing humanitarian work in the Middle East when she was captured by the Islamic State, beaten, abused, and killed in 2015. Her body still has not been recovered. On Wednesday, federal officials indicted 2 men for their part in the death of Kayla and 3 other American hostages in Syria.
So it's important that we're bringing them to justice. Appreciate that the administration continues to lift up Kayla's story.
On Wednesday night, Kayla's story was brought to a national stage at the vice presidential debate. The Muellers were in the debate audience at the invitation of Vice President Mike Pence.
But notably, America's hearts today are with the family of Kayla Mueller. And her family says with a heart that broke the heart of every American that if President Donald Trump had been president, they believe Kayla would be alive today.
The Muellers flew with Pence on Air Force 2 yesterday to Arizona, where he was campaigning, and they attended an event honoring Kayla. That event was to unveil a painting symbolizing the military raid that killed ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, a raid codenamed Operation Kayla Mueller.
We are here today because your daughter is revered and beloved the world over. And thanks to you, her legacy will live on forevermore.
Besides Governor Ducey, National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien attended, and Day said the opening prayer.
And for me, by bringing her story forward, I hope we all can refuse to allow suffering of our neighbors, of our fellow Americans, and of people around the globe to be normal, to be something we accept.
The portrait will go on display at the Arizona State Capitol. Carl Mueller says he hopes the artwork will
inspire people and the leaders of our country who see it to learn Kayla's story in hopes that this will never happen to another American family.
Just hours ago, the two men charged in connection with Kayla's death entered not guilty pleas in a federal court in Northern Virginia. Amon Kote and El Shafi El Sheikh face charges of conspiring to kidnap and murder Kayla and support ISIS. No trial date has been set.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is introducing a plan to allow Congress to assess the president's capacity to serve. Under the 25th Amendment, a president can be removed from office if they're determined unfit for service. The announcement comes a day after Pelosi accused President Trump of being in an altered state from his treatment of COVID-19. But Pelosi says the plan isn't about Trump.
This is not about President Trump. He will face the judgment of the voters. But he shows the need for us to create a process for future presidents. Throughout America's history, our leaders have created and strengthened guardrails in the Constitution to ensure stability and continuity of government in times of crisis. The 25th Amendment creates a path for preserving stability if a president suffers a crippling physical or mental problem and is, quote, in the amendment, unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office and transfers his powers. Specifically, Section 4 of the amendment empowers Congress to set up an independent body to confront such a crisis.
The measure stands virtually no chance of becoming a law, but it's designed to heighten the attention on Trump's condition after his doctors have provided limited information about his recovery from coronavirus. That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us.
For Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.